Let's explore your neighborhood. Oh, boy. Be careful, climb out.
Oh, I'm looking around my neighborhood, and what do I see? Some houses and cars and kids like me. I see buildings made of brick, others made of wood. I see people helping people in my neighborhood.
There you go. What will it be next week? You just never know. It's just, hey, nothing like a little Barney to get us started on our neighborhood. I know, Dak, I feel the same way. Kathy picked that out. She's like, hey, I've got the bumper video. Next time I'm going to have to screen that. So, no, I loved it, Kathy. It was great. So we're talking about our neighbors and being good neighbors and what it means and really have been focused on that the past few weeks. And really, as summer heats up, and we went straight from winter to summer, so and I don't know where spring was, but it just like, oh, I'm here. No, you're gone. But we, as summer heats up and our activities start to get more and more, we start to do a little bit more things, and we always see that around the church. People are just extremely busy this time of the year with baseball and vacations and summer camps, and it's like, when you live in Illinois, we've got like 3 months of good weather, and we try to cram everything in it. We try to cram, and I have all these great plans that I want to get accomplished this summer, and I'm not doing very well yet. But we've been in this 4-week series on being a neighbor, and I've really have been praying to try to challenge you as a church. And so I'm challenging myself to do some things that are outside of my comfort zone and trying to get more discipline in my walk with Christ on every morning and working to do some things. So week 1, if you were here, we talked about really making room for life and eliminating some things. So I'm just going to do a pulse check and just this is for you to ask yourself, how are you doing with the challenges that I've laid down? And some of you, so if you remember what they were, week 1, I asked you to eliminate 2 things, to say no to something, and then to start seeing the neighborhood. That was my challenge for you week 1. So eliminate 2 things from your schedule that are consuming you, that you need to actually say no to, and they may be good things. And then last week, I challenged you, we really talked about the great commandment, which was in Luke chapter 10. I'm going to have to read Luke chapter 10, verse 27. And it says, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So we talked about that last week. I shared with you, gave you some more homework last week, and my challenge to you last week was to introduce yourself. And I made the mistake last week of saying, hi, my name is Trent. So everybody that went out of the church last week said, hi, my name is Trent. You're supposed to put your name in there, okay? Anybody introduce yourself to anybody that you didn't know last week here at church? Did anybody do that? Yes, 2 people. Okay, 3, 4. Oh, we got a few. Okay. So we've got a few people that actually stepped outside of their comfort. It's probably all the extroverts. Is there an introvert here that did that? Like, no way. I'm not raised. Of course, they wouldn't raise their hand. I'm an introvert. Yeah. Oh, Marty. Okay, yes. His wife raised his hand for him. So I love it. But yeah, so hopefully you're taking this seriously, and hopefully you're working on trying to be a good neighbor. To make 2 stranger connections. Did anybody meet a stranger this week? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. So did I. I had a situation occur and saw a girl. I stopped to get gas at a gas station here in town, and there was a girl parked in a car, and she had a baby in the back seat, and I could tell that I thought she was crying, but I wasn't sure. Went in, grabbed a soda. Came back out, and I thought, I just felt God telling me. So I got in my van, and so I was in the church van. I got out of the church van. I'm like, this is going to be it's just awkward, right? So I got out. I thought, I could hear Caden's words, oh, you preach about being a good neighbor. So I got out of the van and walked over there. She was bawling her eyes out, had a baby in the back seat. Had her window down, and I just walked over and I said, hey, I don't know what's going on. She probably I don't know what she thought when you're walking up to her window, but But I had an opportunity to introduce myself to her. She told me her name. She just said, "I'm sorry, I'm having a really rough day." I said, "I can see that. I can see that you're visibly upset." So I introduced myself to her, told her who I was, and then I just asked if I could pray for her. And I prayed for her right there in the parking lot of the gas station at the window down. And she's here this morning. And no, just kidding. She may not be, but I don't know where she is, but I prayed for her, and I don't know where that'll lead, and I don't know how God will use that, but that's in his hands. And so those are the types of things I'm asking us to do as a church and challenging you to do. It's not easy. I got a message last night from somebody else in our church, and it was like, it was a guy, he sent me a message just last night and said, "Hey, I took the challenge from last week and I did it, and man, he's like, it was awful." I was like, he's like, "Man, I did it. I felt awkward and it felt, but he said, I did it." So the last couple weeks I've asked you, and I feel like I've done my best to tell you what God's word says about being a good neighbor, and what the great commandment said in Luke chapter 10 was to love our neighbors as ourselves. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so what we choose to do with that, what you choose to do with that is on you. So I've challenged you that. And I don't know how you did. So the question is, how are you doing? How are you doing with it? Are you really implementing anything? Are you putting any effort to get to know somebody that you don't already know, that you're trying to extend or build some kind of relationship that maybe someday, somewhere you will have an opportunity? I don't know if that girl will show up from the gas station. I don't know if I'll ever see her again in my life. I'm not sure I could pick her out of a crowd, but maybe someday God will use that small interaction at a gas station and that small step of obedience to, she's calling. Somebody answer. That's probably her. What time did you say church started? But you never know what that interaction and what that small step of obedience, and that's what I told the guy that messaged me last night. I was like, "Hey, I know it was difficult. I know that was hard. I'm not sure. We just may never know how God will use that small step of obedience to lead them a step closer into a relationship with Jesus Christ." And that's what I'm trying to get you to do. I asked my family, I asked Morgan, I'm like, "Hey, did you introduce yourself to anybody at church?" She's like, "Nope." I was like, "Okay, well, good. Good job, family." But this got, all of that, and because most of us don't take that challenge and we don't do it, I realize that. I didn't expect to get 100% of you going, "Yes, we met so many new people last week at church. I loved every second of it." Nobody did that. Because of that, I started thinking about what is it that fuels that? What is it that would make us be more like Jesus? I love that song that Jeremy and the band just said. If more of you just take everything, what gets us to that point? What is it that fuels that compassion for lost people so much so that we can get out of our vehicle and walk up to a stranger and say, "Hey, your name," put your name in there. What is it that fuels that? And I got to thinking about that. Is it some kind of notch in our spiritual belt? Woo, yay. Is it a jewel in our crown? I remember when I was a kid, everybody was like, "Oh, you'll have jewels in your crown." Listen, I'll just be happy if I got a crown. I'm not sure I'm a crown type of guy, but maybe. So what is it? Is it to relieve ourselves of some kind of guilt? Is it to fulfill some kind of Christian duty? Well, I better do it. Trent, tell me how to do it. What is it that fuels that passion for lost people? And so, so I think I thought of a few things, and I think the first thing that I think that is understanding the value of a neighbor. Understanding that value. What value is there in a neighbor? Romans 15:2 says this: "Each of us should please our neighbors for their good." Why? To build them up. Anybody ever had a bad neighbor? Anybody? Yes, I see that hand. Yeah. Are you the bad neighbor? I don't know about you. I try to think, I remember, true story, when I was a kid, we lived in Paducah, Kentucky. And we had these people that had that lived literally right next door to us, and it was a lady and her husband. And I wasn't very old. I was second grade when we moved from Paducah, so I wasn't very old, first or second grade. But I remember they had this giant dog, and he would bark a lot and stuff. And my dad would just lean. He would lift the window, and then shoot him with a BB gun. And then let's shoot the dog with a BB gun. And so it got to where when he started barking, that Dad could just tap on the window, and the dog would shut up. Got the message really quick, but they were kind of different people. And I remember, this is true story, it's a little gruesome, but true story. Ambulance showed up at our neighbor's house, and they, when you're a kid, you're sitting out the front of the window going, ooh, what's going on over there? And pretty soon they wheel the guy out on the gurney, and this is a little gruesome, he had a knife sticking out of his chest. Yeah. And I remember that as a kid. I was like, wow, whew, how about that? Mom's like, okay, get inside, kids. And turns out she'd stuck her husband with I had a little bit of a tussle. And stuck you with a butcher knife. And then, I don't know what ever happened, but she was gone for a while. But then she showed back up. So I don't know. They must have patched things up. See, there's hope for broken marriage. I don't know how bad your marriages are this morning. But there's always hope that, we don't, see, sometimes I had somebody tell me that. They was like, what happens if you don't really get along with your neighbor, And do we really value the people that live, not even just next door? And we learned last week that our neighbor is anybody that crosses our path, really. It's not just the people that live next door. But I think we often say, I don't have time to get to know my neighbor or invest in other people's lives. And really, I think some of us say that. We don't actually verbally say that, but we say that by our actions. And actions always speak louder than words, don't they? In other words, when you choose to walk out of here and not introduce yourself to anybody else, or choose not to do those things to get to know people around you and people that are in your path, you are saying, I don't have time to get to know my neighbor or invest in other people's lives. What we're really saying is, I don't consider getting to know new people / neighbors as important as everything else I do. Is really what we're saying. Aren't we? And we're just saying, hey, everything else that I have on my plate, all about me, is more important than other people. And so my question is, do we really value other people? Do we value other relationships? Do we value those relationships that maybe are challenging? People that you're like, man, I don't. Sometimes it's tough to love people. But I believe we all seriously underestimate the impact that we have on our neighbors. And who is our neighbor? We talked about that. It's anybody in our path. Did you know that according to the Appraisal Institute, a bad neighbor can potentially reduce your home's value by 10%? Did you know that? They actually have a word for it. It's called external obsolescence. That's a big word, isn't it, for all you realtors in the crowd? This sort of effect is referred to as external obsolescence. It's where external factors have an effect on your home's value instead of factors on your own property that can cause it to decrease. So in other words, it's the impact that other people have on your property. It's called external obsolescence. And it just got me thinking, what external factors do we have that are impacting our neighbors? Are we bringing their property down? Are they bringing their value down for the way we're living? Or are we the neighbor that somebody wants to build a privacy fence for? What kind of neighbor are you? Or are we the kind of church, because of the way we live and because of the way that we interact with people around us and because of the way we interact with people at the gas station and at Walmart and IGA and everywhere else we go that we increase the value around us? Our external factors have a greater impact on people around us, or are we bringing other people down? Just a thought. What kind of impact are you having on your metaphorical neighbor at work, at school, at the community? Are we the people that are bringing the property values up or down? Do we have unkept lawns and billy goats and mean dogs? Sorry, I know you'd have billy goats, Brad. That wasn't noxious kids. Are we always burning smelly stuff? I had a neighbor that did that once. Just burned a bunch of smelly stuff. Is what is coming out of our homes and what is coming out of our lives, is it influencing people for the positive? Do other people in this community, do people that we come in contact value the relationship that they have with you? Or are we really just saying, I don't consider getting to know new people as important as everything else I do? So I started thinking about what's that look like? What should it look like to be a good neighbor? If you look in Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 through 18, we're not going to read all of them, but it kind of lays it out very quickly. Live generously toward the poor and alien. Do not steal from anyone, verse 11. Do not be deceptive in dealings with people. Do not swear in God's name. Anyway, pause there. Do not oppress, rob, or exploit the poor by paying unfair wages. Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block before blind. That's just mean. Do not be partial to the poor or show favor to the great. Judge honestly. Do not commit financial fraud. Do not hate your brother. Do not seek revenge or hold a grudge against your extended forgiveness. Can you imagine if we started living like that toward other people? If the whole world lived like that and actually cared for one another? What kind of impact would we have on our? Do we value our neighbors enough not to be the impact in bringing them down? Maybe you're the good neighbor. I don't know. But the question is, how do we neighbor? Sometimes you have that bad neighbor. The question is, how do you neighbor them? How do you be a good neighbor to the bad neighbor? And I think there's two words that Scripture teaches us about, and it's grace and mercy. Grace and mercy. You know the difference? I don't know if you ever know the difference. It's kind of confusing. But mercy is not getting what we deserve. In other words, we deserve punishment. God has mercy on us and doesn't send us all to hell. Bonus. But then grace, he takes it up a notch with grace. Because grace is getting what we don't deserve. Not only do we not get what we do deserve, we're getting what we don't deserve. In other words, he's like, hey, I'm not gonna punish you for that, but not only am I not going to punish you for that, I'm going to give you everlasting life. Here's a gift. You didn't deserve this. You didn't earn it. It's reckless love. I couldn't earn it. I don't deserve it, but I get it. Grace and mercy. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 4 through 9 says this, but because of his great love for us, God, who is what? Rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ. And even when we were dead in our transgressions, by what? By its grace you have been saved. And God raises us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms of Christ Jesus, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace expressed in his kindness to us in Christ Jesus. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And it is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. Have you ever noticed that when somebody does something wrong in our world or our community, we want justice, don't we? Like when bad things happen and people do bad things, we want justice. We demand justice, don't we? We believe in justice. When someone has wronged us, we are quick to demand vindication. When somebody has done something bad, when they have been the bad neighbor, we want them to pay. We want justice. But when it's us, we want mercy, don't we? You know, I've been known to drive a mile or two over the speed limit. Okay, maybe a lot over the speed limit. And I have been pulled over a number of times. And each time that I've gotten pulled over, I can't ever tell you that I said, listen, officer, I was breaking the law and I demand justice. I want to pay the maximum full penalty for my disobedience of your laws. I've never said that. No one ever says that when they get pulled over. They want, hey, what are the chances of getting a warning? Have you ever asked a cop that? Anybody? Just me? I've tried crying. Dave, doesn't work. Sobbing, weeping. Can I get a warning? No. Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. But we want this justice, and we need to become, if we're going to be good neighbors to bad neighbors, we have to be grace bearers. And grace bearers are marked by behaviors and attitudes. This is really important. You might want to write this one down. Grace bearers are marked by behaviors and attitudes that stand out in a grace-starved world. People aren't used to that. People are, most of the time when you do somebody wrong, you know you've done something wrong. Maybe you know you're guilty. I knew I was guilty. I was driving over the speed limit. You don't expect, our world lives in this world that we don't expect. People don't expect grace from us, which is just sad to me. If we're going to be good neighbors and good followers of Jesus Christ, and we're going to love our neighbors as ourselves, we have to be grace bearers. Grace bearers have behaviors and attitude that stand out, that surprise people. Like, wow, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect you to forgive me of that. That's what we have to do. Grace bearers have reckless love. They're generous forgiveness and sacrificial sharing. I don't know if we measure up to that. Grace and mercy. Third thing is I got to thinking about was really, to answer my first question, is what fuels grace and mercy and valuing our neighbor, and so much so that we actually will introduce ourselves to somebody and step out of our comfort zone and do something that makes us stand out. And what fuels it? What is that neighboring fuel? And my question to you this morning, when I started thinking about that, is have you ever lost anything of value? Anybody ever lost anything of great value? Like incredible value? Has anybody ever lost your child? Be honest. We did. We lost our kids all the time. I know, we're terrible. Like, I remember one time we lost the girls, and Morgan was little, and we had her, I don't know, she was in Walmart. Turned around, she was gone. Anybody ever have that parent? Have you ever had that, like, panic, that sheer panic that you've lost your child? I mean, you turn around and they were right there and now they're gone. Has anybody ever felt that? Yes, I have felt that. I don't know if you know what that feels like, but that's just like, and automatically you think, okay, somebody has snatched my child, because it happens. And I can remember looking, and she was like, she'd climbed into the middle of one of those circular clothes racks. Couldn't find her. I did that to my parents. I got lost at SeaWorld when I was a kid. I didn't find the hard world. Went to SeaWorld. I was in SeaWorld all day long by myself. Went to the shows by myself. Shamu. Petted the dolphins. No kidding. Like, it was before cell phone. We didn't have it. I turned around and everybody was gone. I was like, okay, looks like I'm spending the day in the park by myself. walked around, went to the dolphin show, went to the sea otter show, went to the chamois. Had a great day by myself. My parents, not so much. I got one of the brush-off spankings, you get. You got something on your pants, and it was like a brush-off, but it was a spanking at the same time. You ever get one of those? Got one of those at the end of the day. But they were just my mom's face when she finally saw me. Could tell. She was worried sick. You ever lost something like that? I think sometimes, I remember one time we left Kylan at church. We got home. Hey, you got Kylan? Nope. We got a phone call, and it was the neighbor of the church going, hey, there's a little redheaded boy in the front door crying. I was like, yeah, we left him there. Do you know parents of missing children that have been kidnapped or missing say that the pain is excruciating, and psychologists have confirmed that the loss is even greater than when a child dies, because they have to decide when to give up the search. When to give up the search is different for each. They have to make the point of when they decide, I'm not going to search anymore. And here's the thing. When we love something, we're willing to do anything to find it. Some parents of lost children say, I will never stop looking. The point is, love always requires a search. Did you know that? Love always requires a search. I think some of us look harder for our lost cell phones than we do for lost people. You ever lost your cell phone? People go in panic over it. Turn the couch upside down, going through the car. We're searching crazy for our cell phone. How hard are we searching for lost people that live right next door, that are in your backyard? Luke chapter 19:10 says, for the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. If it was good for Jesus, it's good for me. Love is at the center of one of the most famous scriptures ever. You could probably repeat it with me. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. You see, love is the fuel that fuels our desire to be good neighbors. I was trying to get ready for this message, and I was getting to this part of my message, and I was thinking, man, it would be a great song if we sang Reckless Love this morning for church. And I texted Jeremy. I'm like, hey, Jeremy puts the song set together, and I texted him middle of the week, and I'm like, hey, he's really good, has it done at the first part of the week, and texted him, I think it was Wednesday, and said, hey, FYI, Reckless Love might be a good song, might go really well with my message. And then he just texted back and says, hey, check your email. And it was already on the song set. Because his love is reckless. He'll leave the 99 to find the one lost. Because love always requires a search. God came searching for us in the name of love. Love moved God to be human. Love allowed nails to be driven. Love endured humanity and excruciating pain. Love fueled God's passion for all of us. We were worth the cost of humiliation. We were worth the pain. The juice was worth the squeeze. The great commandment, love God, love our neighbor, pretty much it. The question is, do we really love our neighbor? Do you? That's at the heart of it. It's not some mark on our notch on our spiritual belt. It's not some kind of reward. It's not something out of guilt. It really should come and fueled from a place of, do we really love people? Do you really care about people that are lost and don't know Jesus? It's as simple as that. Do we have a heart of compassion? Luke 19:41 says, "But as he came closer to Jerusalem, and he saw the city ahead, he began to weep." I asked the band to come up. Do we really love our neighbors that much? When is the last time you have been so concerned for lost people that you wept for them? Have we ever been so concerned that people don't know Jesus that you wept for them? And maybe the answer to that is, honestly, if we were honest, probably most of us would say, well, not really. Nope. I've never really wept for people that didn't know Jesus. May explain why you have a difficult time introducing yourself to somebody new. How willing are we to have reckless love for people? Maybe you'd say, maybe not really. I feel like I should, but I just don't. I'm so busy. I'm just comfortable in my own family. I'm comfortable dealing with my own issues. I got so much going on my plate. I'm not really equipped or have time for that, Trent. And that may be true, honestly. If we're all honest, we're probably a lot of us right there. So how do we change that? How do we stop being a church just to be church? And how do we actually start being disciples and followers of Jesus Christ, which actually means sharing good news with other people? We have this great secret and we just sit on it. We have this great freedom of forgiveness and and we do nothing with it. We just sit here with it in our blue puffy chair. Some of you haven't done anything this past week different from the week before. At what point in time do we start doing something, anything? Walk over to somebody at the gas station and say, "Hey, can I pray with you?" Something. It's something. So how do we change that? And I have one incredibly simple challenge for you this week. And I double dog dare you. I want us all to pray one simple prayer. And that would be that God would give you and me a heart like Jesus. That's all you got to do this week. Spend a little bit of time praying. God, give me a heart like you. Give me a heart like Jesus. Can you do that? Give me a heart like Jesus. But be careful, because he likes to answer that one. And he will. And all of a sudden you'll have compassion for people and you have no idea why. And that compassion will override any fear that you have about reaching out to lost people. So I dare you this week to pray that prayer. I challenge you to do that. Give me a heart like Jesus. Help me to see people the way you see them. Read a quote this week. I'll end on this. It says this: one's life is usually about as wide as one's love. One's life, your life, is about as wide as your love for people. I'm going to ask you to stand this morning. I'm just going to give you a second. I just feel like I should. I hadn't really planned this. I'm just ask Jeremy just to sing through the chorus of that song, Reckless Love, and just give you a second to start today praying that prayer. So if you bow your heads and Jeremy